Do you want to save money on your road trip? Here are 10 easy things that you can do to save yourself some cash. Hi, I'm Kat and welcome to Wandering Bird, where we share tips and tricks for motorhoming and campervanning around the UK and Europe. And today we're talking all about money. Let's face it, the amount of our road trips has definitely gone up, especially with the recent fuel increases. And a lot of people are saying that they're not sure they can afford to do big road trips or the road trips that they have planned because of the amount it's going to now cost them. So I thought I would share a few tips with you to reduce the cost of your road trips. Admittedly, I can't go around and petition Shell and Esso and all the big fuel companies to give us all a massive discount. Wouldn't that be lovely? But I can share a couple of easy things that you can do to hopefully make your vehicle more fuel efficient and also help you save some cash in other ways to help the overall cost of your trip perhaps reduce just a little bit. Before I dive in, if you'd like to grab your free pre-trip departure checklist, the link is in the notes. That will help keep you all organised before you head off on your trip. If you're new to the channel, hi, welcome. We share tips for motorhoming and campervanning, and if you'd like to see more, by all means, hit subscribe. Okay, let's dive in. So let's start off with some things that you can do before you've even left on your trip. The first thing you can do is to check your tyre pressures. Now, if your vehicle is set up correctly and you've got the right pressure in your tyres, your vehicle will be more fuel efficient. So you can check your manufacturer's handbook, or even better, take your vehicle for full service. If you're going to be doing a big long trip, take it for service at a garage. They'll be able to check all that for you, as well as checking things like your oil, and then you can make sure that the vehicle is at its optimum for you, and that will definitely make it more fuel efficient. Another thing you can do to your vehicle is to reduce its weight. Now, we all need an excuse to go on a diet, but I'm not talking about you right now. I'm talking about your vehicle. Not only do you need to pay attention to your payload. If you don't understand what payload is, I will leave a link here to a video that explains it for you. But the lighter you can make your vehicle, especially if you've got a big motorhome, the more fuel efficient it's going to be. So think about what you're going to be doing on that particular journey and maybe reduce some of the stuff that you might not need on that trip. For example, we used to carry a generator with us everywhere. We also have 2 power banks. We've got both the Jackery and the EcoFlow. If we're doing a weekend trip to our local campsite, we're not going to take, or to be fair, we're not going to take any of those because we tend to use mains when we're on a campsite. We have also stopped taking the generator with us anywhere now. We just use the power banks. And also another thing that we've stopped doing is travelling with a full tank of water. Now, if you're going to be staying off grid for a while, then that's fine. And there is nothing dangerous about travelling with a full tank of water, unless you're going up and down really, really steep mountain passes like in the Alps or perhaps in Scotland. But just travelling around the UK motorway network is not dangerous having a full tank of water, but it will definitely make you heavier, which in turn will make you use more fuel. So don't do that, especially if you're going to go to a campsite where you can get more water. You might want to travel with as little amount in the tank as you can get away with. Couple more things you can do to overall reduce the cost of your trip. Firstly, travel out of high season, travel out of school holiday season and the peak summer months. If you can do that, everything's going to be quieter, but also the cost of places like campsites and ferries and the tunnel and everything just reduces. So overall, the same trip will cost you much less money. You can as well use something like the ACSI camping card, which we're massive fans of. One thing I learned recently that I wasn't aware was some of the campsites that are in the ACSI camping card scheme actually accept the card in August, like the back end of August and into September. So it's not like out in the really outer shoulder months that you can take them. You can actually use them in the summer months as well. So that's definitely something to look into, and that can give you like a 30% discount off a night's camping, which is well worth it. So traveling out of season is really, really worthwhile. Another thing you can do if you are going to be going over to Europe and you want to take either obviously the tunnel or the ferry is travel out of the main peak days. So avoid Sundays or Mondays if you can, although Mondays going out there is not so bad, but also travel outside the main peak hours. So travel during the middle of the night, and you'll find that the costs are a little bit cheaper for you. An exception to this is if you want to do an overnight crossing, say from Portsmouth to Cannes, getting that overnight crossing and taking the cabins are worth so much more money than if you do a daytime crossing and want a cabin on that one. So it's definitely worth playing around with some different ideas to find the cheapest crossing for you. You can also join a motorhome club. Now, if you join a motorhome club, and we're members of both the Caravan and Motorhome Club and the Camping and Caravanning Club, you can get discounted rates at all of their campsites, and that includes obviously the CL and the CS sites as well, which are the smaller sites. And those in themselves save you a lot of money. So if you're going to be using campsites a lot, it's well worth joining a motorhome club, and then you can use their network at a reduced rate. If you are planning on going into Europe, then you can use a system like the Airs. If you've got a motorhome or campervan, caravans aren't allowed to use Airs. And you can also use schemes like Britstops and France Passion, which allow you to stay places for a much cheaper rate. So it's worth planning the trip perhaps a little bit to stay in places which won't cost you quite as much money as the peak campsites. If you know you don't need all those facilities and the kids clubs and maybe even the swimming pool and the restaurant, and you just want somewhere to stay with your van, then there are definitely some cheaper options than the massive campsites which are like £30 or £40 a night. And one last thing you can do before you've even left is to check your insurance. Are you paying for what you need and what you're actually using? So for example, if you've decided this year to stay in the UK, are you paying for extra European coverage that you're not using this year? Are you paying for European breakdown that you're not using this year? Do you have things on your van or motorhome which might reduce your cost? For example, Caravan Guard, they often offer a discount if you have a reversing camera or if you have a tracker, and lots of other insurance companies do the same too. So it's well worth contacting them and perhaps even shopping around to see if you can get a cheaper insurance rate elsewhere. Right, let's move on to things that you can do whilst you're actually travelling, whilst you're driving around. So the first thing, obviously, let's talk about fuel. Did you know that there are times in petrol stations where they have a slightly cheaper rate than normal? Now, traditionally that was on a Monday morning. I believe it's still the same, but it's well worth paying attention to your local petrol stations and seeing when the prices fluctuate. Obviously, Friday, Saturday, Sundays, when people are travelling for a weekend, is going to be the most expensive time. The other thing that you can do as well is use some sort of app or tracker to find the cheapest local petrol stations around your area. For example, on our TomTom Camper Go, they have a system, if you've connected it all up to your smartphone via Bluetooth, they have a system that will show you the cheapest fuel stations on that day on your route. So you can actually see where to stop. And the other thing as well is to come off the main motorway and the main road network and go to places like supermarkets are generally cheaper, or the smaller fuel stations out the way. That does go a little bit inverted. If you're somewhere like deepest, darkest Scotland or Wales, the little fuel stations, because they've had to travel so far to get the fuel there, they can actually be quite expensive too. But normally you'll find supermarkets and places are cheaper than the main motorway service stations. The other thing we can all do in our big vans is to slow down a bit. Just reducing your speed by 10% can save you a lot of money. And of course, in the summer when it's warm, everyone gets just a little bit stressed on the road. So just slow down a bit, you'll save some money and you'll arrive in a much better, calmer state of mind. I have got a couple of things to keep you occupied on the drive if you would like to. If you're traveling with kids, God bless you, I've got a whole great big post on activities that kids can do on the drive to keep them occupied and stop asking that dreaded question. And I've also got a whole road trip playlist that you can download on Spotify and also transfer over to Apple Music if you use that. And we've got our road trip survival kit, which has got loads of fun questions and games and things that you can do as a family or as a couple, which will keep you occupied and hopefully entertained. I will leave the links for all of those in the notes below. Another thing you can do for your driving is to drive cleverly, so avoid really quick accelerating or really sharp braking. Both of those will increase your fuel usage. Another thing which I didn't know until recently is don't coast or put it in neutral when you're going downhill. Keep it in a really good gear and just slowly ease your foot off the gas. Apparently that makes your vehicle more fuel efficient. So doing that should hopefully stop you burning quite so much fuel. And as long as you're not going uphill and don't need the extra power, of course, try to change up your gears before you hit around 2000 revs. That will vary depending on your actual vehicle. But if you can change your gears while the revs are still fairly low, you are not using quite as much fuel. So around 2000 revs is about right. Unless, of course, obviously you're going uphill and need that power. A couple of extra things you can do to reduce the cost while you're driving is avoid toll roads or any bridges that you need to pay to cross, and avoid any low emission zones. So places where you have to pay to get into, if you avoid all of those, then that will obviously reduce the cost of your trip. And a couple of things that you can do whilst you are on your actual holiday. We've mentioned choosing where you stay carefully, so choosing smaller campsites or cheaper campsites or Airs or Britstops or anywhere like that. If you don't need the full campsite facilities, that will massively reduce the cost of a week's trip if you stay somewhere that isn't a full-on campsite. Another thing that you can do is use refillable gas. Refillable gas is much cheaper than using bottled gas. Of course, you have to pay to get the system installed, but if you use your van a lot, it's well worth doing. I know that stations and certainly bottled gas is getting harder and harder to find, but you can still find LPG both in the UK and in Europe. It's not as rare as some of the news stories might make you think. So if you're going to use your van a lot, it's definitely worth getting a refillable gas system fitted. You can also use the electric system when you are on a campsite. so you're not using your gas, and that will save you a little bit of money as well. Another big thing which most of us spend far too much money on is food and drink. Obviously, the more you eat and the more you drink, the more it's going to cost you. But there are ways that you can reduce the overall cost of food and drink for your trip. So you can certainly bring your own food and you can cook your own food rather than eating out. That one's obvious. And if you want some ideas for easy road trip meals, I will leave that in the link for you as well. But things like planning your meals a little better, so you can plan leftovers, or you can plan not to cook every night, so you're not using the gas for the oven every night and things, or using something like a ridge monkey, so you're not heating up an entire oven just to cook a piece of toast or warm a bread roll. Those things will definitely just reduce the cost of food and drink. And then obviously shopping at cheaper places is going to make buying the food so much cheaper for you. We're big fans of Aldi and Lidl, but other supermarkets are of course available, especially around the UK. We all know what they are and which ones are the most expensive. And in Europe, we tend to find that Aldi and Lidl are generally the cheapest, but shop around, see what you can find. And one last tip for you is, if you are planning on touring, think a lot about what you're planning on doing. So if you want to visit massive attractions, perhaps look at getting discounted tickets or tickets in advance. They will often be cheaper than buying them on the door. Or if you are more interested in going up into the mountains or going out with nature, avoid big cities completely. If you don't take your kids to a shop, they can't spend any money. Big tip there. But also, if you're not taking yourself to a shopping area or a city, you can't spend any money either. Just make sure you go somewhere with ice cream. Every holiday needs ice cream. But a little bit of forethought and a little bit of Googling, so if you can get discounted tickets for some of the attractions, could save you a lot of money. I hope you found those tips useful. If you did, a thumbs up is always much appreciated. And if you are new to the channel and like to see more from us, by all means click subscribe. Thank you as always for your time, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye!